Well, hello out there, everyone, and welcome once again to Passion for the Paranormal, bringing a passion for the paranormal to you. I'm your host, Curry Stegan, and it's so wonderful to be back with you once again for another great episode. So my guests tonight are Paul Welch and Zach Watters, and Paul and Zach are from my great home state of Utah. They are paranormal investigators and creators of Paranormal Veracity Media. And they also produced a fairly recent film entitled Eureka Unearthed, Echoes of the Past. So they're going to be talking to me a little bit about their film and some of their experiences as paranormal investigators. And Paul and Zach have been investigating for quite some time. And they've visited many different locations. And so they have a lot of experience between them. So it's really going to be great to pick their brains and hear about some of their experiences as investigators. If you haven't been over to the Facebook page, please head over to facebook.com/passion, the number 4, the paranormal, and like and follow us there. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/passion, the number 4, the para. You can also head over to the website at www.passion, the number 4, the paranormal.com. And you can catch up with past episodes there. You can share your paranormal experiences and even blog about past paranormal topics on the show. You'll head over to the website and visit us there. And if you know a friend you think that would like the show, please share the link with them so they can check it out and tune into the show. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the discussion with Paul and Zach, and I really hope you enjoy tonight's episode. All right, so my guests tonight are Paul Welch and Zach Watters, and Paul and Zach are paranormal investigators and live in my home state of Utah. They are creators of Paranormal Veracity Media, and they recently produced a film titled Eureka Unearthed, Echoes of the Past. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys on. We talked a little bit before we actually started here in the interview. I really enjoyed the film. I like how you guys covered the history of it, going into that, and then all the different locations. And I just thought you guys had a lot of good content in the film. Really enjoyed it. Before we get into, because I do want to talk about the film, but before we do that, if you guys and we'll start with Paul. Paul, if you could just kind of talk about how you got started in this crazy thing we call paranormal investigating. How you kind of got your start in this.
Well, I've always been fascinated with all things supernatural, ghosts, Loch Ness, Bigfoot, all that. But actually, I had a friend of mine that won tickets on a radio show to do an investigation at Asylum 49, the old Tour Hospital. So I said yes. He dragged me to that. So that was kind of my first brush with, the whole ghost hunting or paranormal investigating. But it was a public hunt. So I kind of liked it. So I went back again, maybe 6 months later or whatever it was, to do another one, to see if I really did like it. But after that, I kind of ran into a team that I joined and went from there. So that's how I got into it, like back in 2011, I think it was. Yeah.
And Zach, how about for you? How'd you get your start in this?
For me, it was more of, I want to say, a personal experience. Back in 2007, here in Salt Lake, the Trolley Square Mall, if you're from here, I'm sure you know where that is.
Oh, yeah,
but there
absolutely.
was a shooting that took place, and 5 people were killed, and one of those people that were shot and killed was a close friend of mine. And it was maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks after that event happened, I was having a dream one night where she came through and she said, "I'm okay, don't worry about me, I'm in a better place." And it was very intense. It woke me up from my sleep, and when I woke up, I saw her at the foot of my bed standing there looking at me. And kind of cliche, but yeah, she looked like a spirit, kind of translucent, kind of faded away. But yeah, after that, I started watching the shows, met up with some teams locally that were into it and tagged along and learned as much as I could. And yeah, I got bit by the bug, and ever since then, I've just been into the paranormal, and it's got a hold of me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you have any experiences prior to that 2007 experience, or was that really the first time you could say you had any experience with the paranormal?
No. As a child, I remember having experiences. And like kind of as a adolescent, early teenager, I remember playing the games, the Bloody Mary, the light as a feather, stiff as a board, and maybe something was opened up playing those games as a teenager. But I've always been attracted to it, but there was some time where I kind of faded away, and then after that experience, I really, really got back into it and drawn into it, and yeah.
And how about for you, Paul? Now, did you come into it a little bit as as a skeptic, or did you have any experiences prior to getting involved?
I've never really been a skeptic. I've always wanted to believe. But what happened before even getting involved was we would have experiences at our house, and they would usually happen when I wasn't home and my wife at that time was. She'd call me freaking out, hey, this just kind of fell off of here, or this moved from where it originally was. We've had house alarms set off with nobody in the house, and these were actually motion detectors that were set off with nobody in the house, like the day after my father died that happened. That was before I was a paranormal investigator. But the biggest thing that happened, and this was the first time I ever saw something move by itself, is I walked into a bathroom that had a very long counter. And those bed and bath like pump soaps that are square on the bottom and get shallow towards the top?
Right.
Well, that knocked over and slid all the way across this long counter as I walked into the room. And, it was half full, so it was pretty well weighted. And I just sat there staring like, what just happened? That's what was kind of going on before I even really became an investigator. So I was always curious.
Right. Now, you guys started up Paranormal Veracity Media, and this kind of started as a magazine initially. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys got started doing that.
That was all Paul. Paul created this. It's his child, his baby, so I'll let him take that.
I started Paranormal Veracity magazine, it was a few years ago. I was on a team at that time, which kind of frowned upon me doing this little side project. But I felt there was a little niche need for it, to tell these stories on paper or digital on computer. So I started it, and it was a huge ambition, to tackle this by myself. I didn't have any help. So I started I put out a couple of issues and then realized this was too time consuming. It would take me a month to put those together, because I'm not a writer. Coming up with stories is easy, but to get other people to kind of get involved and help get these stories and things that I needed, it was really time consuming, and that's kind of where Zach stepped in because we were already investigating together a lot. He goes, well, maybe we should kind of do it in a video format in the same way, still be like paranormal journalists and storytellers, but in more of a video format. So that's where it kind of went from being a magazine to the media idea.
Okay.
Well, that's where the media came into. I still want Paul to do another version of the magazine. He's only done 2 of them, and ever since then we've done mostly videos, clips, evidence, documentaries. But I actually like the magazine, Paul. And I think another issue should be warranted, in my opinion, but
It's work.
Now, getting to the film, the Eureka film that you guys recently did, what kind of spurred that on? Now, had you guys visited Eureka? Now, we're talking Eureka, Utah, because there's several other Eurekas out there. I think there's Eureka, Texas, Eureka, Arkansas, Eureka, Nevada, all these Eurekas out there. But so your guys' film was based on the little pinprick of a town now, at this point, Eureka, Utah, which used to be really quite a booming mining town. How did you guys get involved in doing the film? Had this just been a place you guys had investigated a lot? I've been there. I'm a paranormal investigator. I investigated there 3 or 4 times. But talk to me a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about how you guys got involved and made the decision.
Well, if you've been there and you've investigated, what buildings did you have access to? Sorry.
I have investigated the Gatley building, the McCormick Bank, City Hall, the library, and then we did do the bed and breakfast on one occasion.
Okay, and out of all of those locations, where did you feel the most activity took place? Where?
I would probably have to say City Hall for me personally.
Okay.
I thought Gatley was interesting. I only had one visit to Gatley. So I would have to say personally City Hall based on EVPs and some of the evidence the group I've worked with has gathered there.
Yeah, as far as your question goes, I've been there multiple times. A good friend of mine, Danielle Smith, who is in the movie, she's actually the one that kind of hosts a lot of events out there. And she actually has keys to these buildings now. So she's been working with the owner, and she's the one that lined up basically a whole weekend stay with all access for filming. So that's how that kind of came into play.
Okay. And so as you guys got into the film here, you guys had a lot of different locations you filmed in. Where do you feel like, now I know you had the film and there was interesting activity. I think you had some interesting activity at Gatley, at the White Owl building. Where do you guys personally feel like is the hot spot for you going out there, aside from the film? Just what do you think is the biggest hot spot?
There's 4 mine buildings up above the main street, the Eagle and Bluebell mine. That is probably the most active area in town. I don't know if you've been up there.
And I have to agree, yeah. Paul hit the nail on the head. I was going to say the same exact location, but yeah. The old mining structure is up there behind, what is it, the inn, the bed and breakfast right now.
Yeah, so if you go up past the bed and breakfast and Billy's mansion that's above that, the old Fitch's mansion, there's 4 buildings up there, part of the old Eagle and Bluebell mine facility.
Haunted AF.
So you guys spent some time both in the day and the night, at least on the film. You had some visits there in the day and at night. I thought that was interesting. Now, you guys actually believe you were told to leave, correct?
Yep. Yes.
A few times, yes.
Now, that happened during the day filming, and then you went back at night. And by the way, I think if some people would have been told to leave, they probably wouldn't have wanted to go back. You guys went back later. Was it the same night that you guys went back?
It was the same night, yeah.
Okay.
Later that evening.
And now you guys you guys used the SB7 quite a bit. I know in the film, I really haven't had a lot of success with it. But was that, in that particular location, did you guys get any EVPs or anything else that was interesting during that particular day?
No, I didn't get any EVPs, but we were seeing things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I saw Zach, I know Zach, I've been investigating with Zach for a long time, and I seriously thought he just walked around the building to use the bathroom, and that's what I was seeing, him just cross the window. So when I turned and he was to my other side just standing there, I'm like, dude, I just saw you outside. And they say there's like a shapeshifter type of entity up there, and I'm not sure if that's true. But people have seen things that shouldn't be there, just out of the blue. And we saw what looked like a snake, become a rat.
Right, I remember that.
What the hell that was?
That's more like, I want to say, what is it? Like elemental spirits.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the energy there is all just like really at the edge of our seats.
Because the whole area, it's called the Tintic Mining District, and Tintic was a Native American chief, and it was very, used Native American land before the settlers came in there, started mining it and tearing up the land. So, and like I said, seeing the things that we're seeing, not skinwalkers, what would you call it?
I don't know, shapeshifters or something.
But there's a natural element to the land. There is I want to say Native American influence onto what happens up there. It's weird. Yeah, seeing things that look like a rat and then turn into a snake, or Paul seeing like a replication of me when I'm standing right behind him and he thinks he sees me right outside the window of the building we're in. It's kind of weird activity up there.
When we went back that night, like, we were already hearts racing. Danielle was actually scared, and I've never seen that girl scared ever on an investigation. And she was a little freaked out. She had to be right next to me most of the night in that building. But yeah, most of the SB7 responses we got we weren't getting any radio. His SB7 already comes with the antenna disconnected.
Right.
So we weren't getting any radio signals at all. Those were all responses that were just coming through the static.
Yeah, and they did come through pretty clear on the film. I think you got a couple of times during the day you were asked to leave. What did you pick up at night? And when you guys, now you got a couple of voices that came in when you were there again at night. What did you pick up there in that session?
You remember, Zach?
When we went back at night.
Yeah, when we went back at night, like what responses were we getting?
Oh God.
I know we had something thrown. It sounded like the size of a brick. Like, it was loud. That was thrown before we saw the snake, rat, whatever that was. So that might have fallen from the ceiling, but it was pretty loud. And you guys kept hearing what sounded like talking. I remember that. But besides the SB7, we used an app called the Echo Box. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the app.
But
yeah.
there was responses on that too that never made the film. But the one that we really showed is when Zachary Stone kind of asked, "Who's up here with us?" And it just said "us," loud and clear. And that's when we're like, "It's time to leave."
Yeah.
Now, did you guys have just this, even the first time you went in, did you have this kind of sense, this kind of foreboding sense, or that something didn't want you there? Or did it really take until you got those voices that you felt like, okay, maybe it's time to, grant their wishes?
I've always felt that way since the first time I've gone up there. Like, you're being watched, like you're not welcome. But they went up there a couple times to shoot B-roll for the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you guys felt when you went up there, but it's just an eerie feeling.
Yeah, there's definitely certain spots. Like I said, the Eagle and Bluebell mine up there, when we went to shoot B-roll, that's where we went. We took a nice drone up there. That's some of the nice footage you'll see in the documentary. But we went up there before the investigation to shoot that B-roll, fly the drone. But for some reason, that Eagle and Bluebell mine area, man, up there, it's got a definite darker feeling, I want to say. It can be dark, but not negative. It's not necessarily negative, but you just feel like you're in the presence of something. You feel like you are not alone. And it plays with you. It messes with you up there.
Interesting. Now, has anybody been physically, that you know of, has anybody been physically attacked or pushed? Anything like that going on?
Well, Zach actually was starting to get sick that night, like to where, when he walked out of the building, like we were still filming, he's like, he was saying how he was starting to get sick and how he's feeling better once he was a little bit of distance away from the building.
Mm-hmm.
But he was kind of out of it after that. Like, you had to go down there and talk to Diane or something.
Yeah, when we got back, the Highway 6 diner that's right down there in Eureka, that was our base camp. We slept there for 2 nights. But when we got back, I asked someone to take me outside and to sage me and do a cleansing because I felt like ill. I didn't feel well. I felt very sick. And I'm glad I did that because it was literally like half hour after the cleansing was done, I felt a lot better. But I felt as if there was something that, I don't know, latched onto me, wanted to continue the investigation after I was done investigating, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Wow. Well, that's a little bit, I guess you could say, freaky.
Just be careful. Yeah, sometimes when you ask for it, you get it. So just be careful when you go out there and do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You do got to be careful about that. I've very careful about provoking when I go to locations. When I go out to locations, I try to be respectful for the most part. And I think that's kind of what I gathered from you guys. You seem to have a lot of respect for the locations and, in trying to make a genuine connection with, whatever may be there. I want to touch on the history a little bit. Can you guys talk a little bit, because you covered the history at the first part of the film, and I thought that was great. Can you touch on kind of how you feel about doing the historical research as you do investigations?
That's all you, buddy.
Well, for me, it's like if you're going to go there and you're going to investigate and you might get responses, and it's like, what's creating these responses? What happened? Why is this town here? I think a connection to the past and how we investigate now, it's almost like time traveling, I want to say. We're communicating with history. We're communicating with the past when we get EVPs. There was a little bit in the documentary I wish we would have done a little bit more as far as storytelling. We had some people do some voiceovers and read for like Amelia Earhart and read for Maud Fitch. But unfortunately that didn't make the film, but we're working on some new stuff. Hopefully we can put that in there. But as far as history, I love the storytelling aspect of it. I've always loved filmmaking. And I don't see why I can't combine my love with the paranormal with my love of filmmaking. So that's when Paranormal Veracity Magazine turned into Paranormal Veracity Media, because I wanted to bring more of a filmmaking aspect to it, more of a video instead of just reading a magazine.
Right.
But I love the storytelling aspect of the paranormal, because that comes along with just investigating. It's not just the night vision. It's not the talking to spirits. It's connecting to the past, and I love that aspect of the field. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that's kind of the way I feel going out to some of these locations. It almost feels like sometimes you're traveling back in history. And and that's amazing to me, because some of the locations we're going into, and I can't mention a specific location, but one of the places we just recently investigated, it was over 100 years old, this mansion. So, and it's just
you feel that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so amazing to be able to kind of feel like you're almost like you're going back in history. And just that aspect of alone makes it worth it to me for doing this. So, thank you for touching on that. I think that's such an important aspect.
Part of what I do when I investigate these old historic locations is I mentally put myself back to that time the best I can. It's like, because I do kind of look up, history, old photos. So I mentally picture that when I walk into these old historic locations. How did they live? When did they get up in the morning and do what they do? What was this part of the building used for back in the day? And those things really do help you connect with the spirits that are there, because that's the level of thinking that they're on. That's what they experienced in life. So if you walk in already on their plane, you got a head start.
Right. Paul, I want to talk a little about, you captured an EVP, and it's on the film in McCormick Bank. Sounds like a child's voice. And I know Zach was interviewing Diana at the first of the film. She had talked about, she believed there's a child spirit there. I'm just wondering if you think this may be the same child, the voice you captured, the EVP.
I really do, because going back to when I first started investigating out there, other investigators have, kind of mentioned this little boy, that's in the bank, and I don't know why he's there, to be honest. I don't know what the real story is, but I did an event where I brought like 5 people out to Eureka, and one person would be in the bank for like 40 minutes at a time. And I had a female investigator in there for 40 minutes, and she kind of like on audio, she made a connection to a child in the bank, but then she left, and I had a voice recorder rolling in there the whole time. About 2 minutes after she walked out of the bank is when you start hearing this banging around, and then you hear the boy come through and say, "Mom." And it reminded me of like when you leave a little child with a babysitter and you walk out of the door, the child starts screaming for you. That's what it reminded me of. Like this little boy made a connection to her while she was in the bank. And so he was crying out for his mom, as she left. So when other people come and say, yeah, we're connected to a little boy here too, it kind of it worked for the film because it pieced those two things together.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. Zach, you had an experience in the White Owl building, and it was, on the film. Could you talk a little bit? It was with the cabinet. Could you talk a little bit about that?
That was actually Zachary Stone that filmed that cabinet portion.
Oh, okay. I thought that was you.
We get confused all the time. There's two Zach.
Okay, yeah, that was quite interesting. And after you guys had that, after the other Zach had that experience, you guys went back down there. Did you have anything really interesting or compelling happen after that?
There was a definite, weird vibe to it. We basically went down there to try to debunk it, as you can see in the video. That's what I like to do. I am somewhat skeptical. I like to debunk, find the normal before the paranormal.
Right.
So we went down there to debunk it, and then after debunking it, figuring out, hey, how did that door open by itself? There's no way. And then we investigated for a little while. There were some interesting responses we had come through, but it was mostly, I think during that investigation, we heard some footsteps upstairs. It's very elusive, I want to say, in that White Owl section, the Highway Diner section.
The weirdest part about that whole cabinet thing was before he even gets to where the Tommy Knocker poem is, you hear on the audio the door unlatch.
Right.
Yeah.
So it unlatches prior to him ever trying to go up the stairs, and he didn't hear it. He didn't capture that. He didn't notice, or else he would have said, "What was that?"
Right.
But he didn't notice it unlatched, but it's definitely there on audio, which we had a lot of weird audio anomalies with that movie. Like the piano, for instance, as well.
Yeah, that was a big one. That was really weird.
Talk about the piano, because I don't remember that part.
So there was a part where we had a medium come out, and this medium, she was, her name is Shelley, right? I think her name is Shelley.
Yeah.
And she was 3 months in from another country. She was just here for 3 months.
Shirley, no, her name is
Shirley, yeah.
Her name is Shirley, and she's from the Philippines.
And so she's from the Philippines, 3 months into America. And so we had to have her daughter be a translator. And so they kind of walked all the buildings, and we went to the bed and breakfast, and in one of the rooms to have a piano sitting there. And so she kind of walks into the room, and she immediately says, hello. And she goes to sit down at the piano. She's like, he likes to...
Hello? Did I lose you guys?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. It just sounded like you cut out for a second there.
Yes?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can you guys hear me? Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It sounds like you guys dropped off for just a second there.
But anyway, she started talking about how the spirit there likes to play the piano, and piano music starts playing through the audio on the camcorder. It's captured on the audio. Even though nobody in the room acknowledges piano playing, they don't hear it. Those who watched it that were there, I don't remember piano music. But it was captured on the audio, and we can't really explain it at all.
Yeah, now I think I know what you're talking about on the film. Okay, yeah, that was quite interesting. So I'm just going to share a quick story about the bed and breakfast while we were there. We were actually in the it's right close to where that piano room is in the kitchen area, and there's a door that goes back to one of the back rooms, and we were actually in there, me and another female investigator, and we know that door was closed going to that back room. And probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes later, we look over and the door is open. And the female investigator is with me, heard it, she mentioned it, and then we went back and looked on film, and there it was at about 10-minute point, the door's closed. And then we fast forward on the film about 4 or 5 minutes later, and that door is open, and we have no explanation because nobody went into that or opened that door and went back in that back room. So just a little...
That building has stuff in it, for sure.
Yeah, so that was one of the interesting things that happened while we were investigating there, and we still, that door was completely closed, so we never could explain it. So yeah.
And did you have access to the building just to yourself for the whole night?
Unfortunately, we didn't. There were a few other people staying upstairs in one of the other rooms, but they were nowhere in sight. And so we were really the only ones, aside from the owners, who were nowhere over in that area at the time. Everybody was accounted for where they were. We just could not explain what had happened. I mean, it was just really, really bizarre. So, yeah, it is an interesting place. I only got a chance to investigate there once, but we had that happen, and that was quite strange. But
you just got to book out the whole building.
Yeah, that would be fun to do that sometime.
And expensive.
Yeah. So
that sounds crazy, man.
Yeah, it is, and there's a lot of interesting history there, and a lot of interesting buildings. I want to talk a little bit about the Gatley building and your guys' experience from the film there. Now, you guys both experienced being touched right about maybe a minute apart, isn't that right? While you were investigating. Yeah, that was interesting. Now, you also, Zach, were you the one that had witnessed the orb-like light go up the stairs?
Yeah, I was filming at the time. Paul was giving an explanation of the geophone, which is a little app that he has on his tablet. Or if anything walks by, it senses movement, you can touch it, vibrations, it'll go off and beep. But as he was doing that, I saw this light anomaly, and it's one of those things like orbs. It's a very touchy subject and topic in the paranormal field. As far as like pictures of orbs, I really don't take those into account as serious because it's so quick. It's just 1,000th of a second, a quick picture. But in the video, when you can see it manifest, you can see it travel, you can see its pattern of movement and what it's doing. In this one, in my opinion, it follows the path of the steps perfectly. It starts at the bottom, goes up one step, stops, turns around, goes up the second step. And also the Ghost Adventures episode that was out there, they were getting high amounts of activity on that same staircase.
I think they had a anomaly on that same staircase, but
yeah,
not like the same as ours, but they did catch one there.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys hear footsteps or anything on those stairs while you were investigating that night?
The main thing that was happening in the galley building, besides being touched, was we kept hearing these loud thuds that we had no idea where they were coming from. The girls had it happen to them. We went in there after the girls did. We had a really loud thud where you could actually feel the ground shake.
And they were quite spooked.
Where that came from.
I was going to say they were quite spooked by what they experienced when you guys went over to McCormick, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you can see, I guess I was a little frustrated because we just barely started our investigation in the bank building. Barely set everything up, got separated, and like, okay, go. In literally 2 minutes, you guys need to come back in here. And I was like, shit, we just set up, we just got our investigation going in the bank, but, at the same time, never leave someone behind. They really were that freaked out. We had to go back and check on them, so.
Right. Yeah, as good teammates should. Any other, for the Gatley building, anything other than what we just talked about, anything else compelling happen? I guess maybe I should just ask, what is maybe the most compelling thing that's happened since you guys have been investigating there? Or that you've witnessed?
Eureka?
Yeah. And where did it occur?
As far as evidence that I've gotten, that little child saying "mom" is probably the clearest thing I've ever gotten. But we did have an experience while filming that movie where a phone was thrown across the room about 6 feet. We were taking a break in the Highway 6 diner, and Danielle had her phone like tucked into her cot, the pockets that hang from the side. So it was tucked in there, and it was there all day long. And then we're just sitting there eating, and we hear something, and we look back, and her phone is about 6 feet away on the floor. Like, how did it get out of the cot and then thrown across the floor? We're like, whoa.
And it's the same building where that cabinet opened on Zach. So
Yeah.
definitely like poltergeist activity in there, I want to say. Things being moved.
Wow.
I wish we were filming, but it didn't, we were just taking a break.
Yeah.
That's interesting. From your guys' experience, I'm just curious to get your take on this, because I've been at investigations where we're doing EVP sessions, we're trying to ask questions, and then sometimes, because you just mentioned a case where that seemed to happen, where you kind of stop paying attention and maybe you're just talking amongst yourselves, and then something happens. It seems like some interesting things happen when you do that, when you stop paying attention and you kind of are just talking or doing your own thing. I'm just wondering what you guys' take on that is. Has that been your experience sometimes?
My take on that is that's how I caught most of my EVPs.
Yeah.
When we were not asking questions, we're just kind of, talking amongst ourselves, or something funny happens. I've caught some Class A EVPs where we're not even really paying attention.
It's like, just let them chime in instead of directing them when to speak to you, instead of demanding them to speak to you and to touch the green light or go speak into the orange thing on the staircase. Just go and hang out. Let your energy mingle with theirs, and just be open and let things flow, and you'd be surprised at the kind of evidence you can capture when you're just, being lighthearted and your guard's down and you're not making demands. But yeah, you can catch some awesome evidence when you're just doing your thing, being yourself.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. We've went on investigations before where we've completely, at least for a portion of the investigation, said we are not going to do any EVP questions. We're just going to hang out and talk. We pair up with another investigator and they go into, one of the floors and just sit and talk and have a conversation. And I agree. We've had interesting EVPs when that's happened. The other thing I wanted to so you guys also investigated the Fitch Mansion, and that was towards the end of the film, or I guess that was really the last part of the film, for the most part, as far as places you covered. I found it interesting because you had another investigator there that was down there. I think his name was Kevin. And he was, and I don't remember how. I think, Paul, you may have been with him at one point when you were, down there investigating. And then there was another person who actually physically felt like they had been punched, or maybe stabbed. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That was Zachary. Yeah, there was a point in the basement where Zachary felt like he got stabbed. And it was a real painful moment for him, but that was like a personal experience for him. I didn't even know it happened. I wasn't down there with you guys when it happened, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there...
I didn't take it super seriously at the time, because I think, like, I responded, like, something bite you! And he's like, ow, something stabbed me, because we were, like, leaving. We were all just kind of, again, like you were saying, our guard was down. We were just kind of heading out, joking around, and that's when it happened to him.
Wow.
But the funny thing was, the medium before that said there was a bad guy, a mean guy down there.
Right, and I remember
Just
that.
like a good guy? She's like, no, very bad guy.
Right. So have you guys experienced anything else you would consider negative in that building, or was that the first time you had investigated there?
That was the first time we've been in there to investigate.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever been in there.
And I actually was not feeling good in that building. Like, I felt off. Like, I didn't last as long as they did. I kind of pootered out. And they even went back, like after I went back to home base, they went back up there and did some more. But it made me feel ill. That building just was not right.
So just had a different feeling to it than the other.
Yeah,
location.
it was so heavy to where you just felt nauseous the whole time.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't like necessarily negative. It was just uncomfortable. I want to say like a mosquito bite that itches. It was a little irritating, a little uncomfortable, but I didn't feel anything like negative, like I had to get out of there or anything was going to do harm to me. But I wasn't relaxed while I was in the building. I wasn't at ease. It definitely put you on edge, I want to say.
Yeah, the lady who owned it was doing seances and rituals in that building.
Yeah. Opening doorways that maybe she doesn't know how to close. And, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was on the Ghost Adventures episode when they went there, and it
was actually Zachary Stone that lined that up because when he knew they were coming out, he reached out to me to get information on how to contact Billy at the mansion, and he kind of lined that up for them, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, that's one of the buildings I've never investigated. I know it's just right down from the bed and breakfast there, the Tintic Gold Miners bed and breakfast.
Well, if you know Margaret at the bed and breakfast, just talk to her about it, and she can contact Billy.
Now, you guys have investigated a lot of different places, and I'm just curious. So, Paul, I know you've went to Virginia City. You've went back several times. How does Eureka, Utah, stack up to other places you guys have investigated?
I love Eureka, Utah, but it is nothing in comparison to like Virginia City. Virginia City is like a whole nother monster to tackle. You leave there wiped out. I mean, it just destroys you.
Eureka, Utah is like, wow, have you been to Lagoon? Cool. Virginia City is like, you ever been to Disney World? Whoa!
Yeah, pretty much.
For me, that's kind of a good comparison.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually got to spend a couple of nights in Cripple Creek, Colorado, another mining town. Don't know if you guys have heard of it. Quite an interesting place. Got to investigate 3 different locations, and actually one was close by in Victor, Colorado, which is another mining town just up the road a ways, about 8 miles from there. And amazing place, absolutely amazing place. I haven't got the chance to visit Virginia City yet. But let's talk a little bit about Virginia City. Paul, you've been there several times. What are some of your favorite places there?
Well, I've been going up there for 18 years now. So my 2 favorite buildings up there, of course, is the Mackey Mansion is probably one of my favorites because the spirits love to talk and you can catch crystal clear EVPs.
We have another documentary featuring Virginia City. I don't know if you've seen that.
Washoe Club would be the other one. We also really like the brewery, the Union Brewery, which is currently being renovated, which I'm supposed to be going back and filming with a film crew up there. I was supposed to last Wednesday, but it got moved due to weather. But yeah, I love Virginia City. You can go door to door investigating in that town and get stuff.
Now, Zach, you've also visited there, it sounds like, a few times?
Virginia City, oh yes, I've been there several times. Other than the experience of my friend that was shot and killed at Charlie Square, that really got me back into the paranormal stuff, my other biggest experience was in Virginia City at the Washoe Club. It's intense if you go to Virginia City. Poltergeist activity, Silver Queen Hotel, Paul, I remember that night. We stayed there. That's when I've seen like things being moved and lifted in front of my eyes. When I'm sitting there looking at it, I saw Paul's coat get pulled out of a closet and lifted off of the hanger while I was just sitting there. And it's things like that. I wish I had a recorder going. I wish I had a video camera going.
Yeah.
I wish Paul was awake to see what I saw at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like it knew what it was doing. It knew when to let itself be known, because I'm sure I'm not the only investigator that's been in there. And they know that we have devices. They know we're trying to capture evidence. But, yeah, like one of those things, like when you're just relaxing and doing your thing, things happen.
Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah, Virginia City is its own, it's a different league. It's a different level of investigating. It's a different level of experience. It's a little more intense of what the spirits are able to do that affects you physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Suit up, you're going to war.
Yeah. Be ready when you lock down and have a location to yourself at nighttime in Virginia City. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. Wow. It's definitely on the bucket list for me.
I don't know if you saw my post. I just took a group of people up there for their first time on Wednesday.
Right.
And the very next morning, it's like, wow, we've never experienced anything like that ever. Like, Utah doesn't have anything like this. They were blown away.
Right. I'd say probably I had, based on the experiences I had when I was in Cripple Creek, I would say would probably, and I don't know if it reached to the level that you guys are talking about, but 3 different areas that, and 2 of the places I stayed in. One was the Victor Hotel, one was the St. Nicholas Hotel in Cripple Creek, and then the Outlaws and Lawmen's Jail Museum. And activity at all of them, and had really, really interesting stuff happen. And the group was gracious enough to let me go in and investigate the jailhouse with them, so I got the opportunity to do that. So, old mining town like Virginia City, and really, really interesting and some amazing experiences. So I don't know if that's on par with Virginia City, but maybe in the same league. I don't know.
And at the same time, it's a mixture of your energy and the location. Some people can go investigate a location and be like, nothing happened. This place isn't haunted. That sucks. Another different team, another different person with their energy can go into the next weekend and have crazy evidence. A bunch of stuff happens. And a lot of the time, I think that's what it is. It's your energy mixing with the energy of the location. Sometimes it's hit or miss. And, yeah. So maybe you go to a place and it's crazy, and the next person goes in like, I didn't experience anything.
Don't go into a location already tired. I can say that. That makes a huge difference.
Okay.
Talk about, maybe. No, I'm sorry. Go. I was going to say, go ahead and finish what you were going to say, and then I'll ask my question.
Well, just like what influence does it have on an investigation, the concoction of energy of a person and the energy of a location? Why do some people get it hardcore and some people don't?
Right, and that's an interesting question because if you go into, and I've had psychics and mediums on the show. Some people do seem to, and I've had people I've worked with and investigated with that seem to be empathic. And it seems like some people just have, I don't know if you want to call it a different frequency, like on a radio dial, maybe they're tuned into a certain frequency, you're not. And they seem to experience energy differently. For me, it happens, and I feel it in my body. I feel the goosebumps in the hair and static electricity. Other people sense it differently. They may sense cold spots, that sort of thing. It's interesting, though, because you touched on something interesting here, and that is that I think different people experience things different ways. Some people seem to be more sensitive to certain things than others. I think that's definitely true. Some people just experience things different or more sensitive to certain things.
Yeah, I try to tell people, turn off the apps and let it draw you to where they want you in the building. Just listen. Just say, I have a sudden feeling to go over here. Go.
Right.
Don't just not go. Just if you feel you need to go off somewhere, do it. Because there's a reason for it. And you'll find out later.
Right. I think it's kind of a good segue into what I wanted to ask, and that is, when you guys go in and investigate, what are some of what your favorite types of equipment to use?
For me, as far as equipment, I want to either audibly catch it, voice recorder, or I want some visual evidence, so camcorder. I'm usually rolling with those two things. I don't use the lights, the gadgets, the K2s. The spirit box, other than my voice recorder, my camcorder, would probably be the biggest piece of equipment that I use. I like to use the white noise, let them speak and communicate, but the more and more I investigate, like I said, when I first started, I bought all the gear, I got all the gadgets, I spent all this money, and I would walk around in the dark looking at all my gadgets, looking at all the gear. Now, I would rather just walk into a location, just me, myself, my senses. And maybe that's the difference between a beginner and as you get more advanced, you trust your intuition more. You learn that your body is the best tool that you can have on an investigation, in my opinion. So That's where I stand on that.
How about for you, Paul?
I like live listening when I go on investigation. So I have my really high-end voice recorder attached to my camera rig with my camera on, and I'll have my headphones in, so I'm listening live, and I'm directing the other investigators that are with me. It's like, this is what I'm hearing. I just heard this. And so I'm listening to everything live while having other cheaper voice recorders kind of spread out throughout the building, catching anything they might capture. So even though I have a lot of gear in my box, I've been using less and less, more voice recorders, cameras, and, we do use Spirit Box. I have an SB11, but if I'm with Zach,
SB7,
I let him rock the SB7. Because his has the antenna detached, so we're not getting a lot of the radio.
Right. And that's been my biggest drawback to using it is you get so much radio interference, and sometimes it's hard, at least for me, to separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will. I've used it, I've experimented with it, which kind of leads me into my next question. How important for you guys is experimentation when you're investigating?
I think it's very key. You've got to experiment. You've got to try new things. Without experimentation, without pushing the envelope or trying that next new thing, you wouldn't progress. You wouldn't evolve to the next level. So
one of his experiments was we did a Facebook Live over night vision in a building where we weren't going to be in that section of the building at all. We did it for an hour. So basically, he set up his phone to go Facebook Live on a monitor of night vision of this hallway. So we went off and we investigated a whole different section of the building. And in that 1 hour live stream, we caught these light anomalies going up and down the hallway that we couldn't explain. And they were only for the longest one was 8 frames of a film. Your phone shoots in 24 frames per second. The longest one was 8 frames, so it was super quick to where I had to slow it down to 10% to see its movement along the hallway. But we caught 3 of them just on doing that. Just, hey, we're going to set up a camera and do Facebook Live, and the people watching the Facebook Live could watch this hallway without us being there.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you guys have obviously investigated other places in Utah. What are some of just name a couple other places you like to go out and investigate here in the great state of Utah?
Leslie Family Tree. Of course, I like the Asylum 49. We had something amazing happen to us in Saltaire.
Saltaire is a very good location. I love Saltaire. That's a good
location. Hard to get into, but it's a good location. We really do like Eureka, just because it's kind of out there.
I have had great experiences and great evidence at Mercer Cemetery. Mercer.
Yes.
Some people pronounce it differently.
I've been there several times. I love the location. Absolutely.
But yeah, you definitely feel it up there. There's some juju in the area.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing that I find interesting about that location, and I don't go to cemeteries, that is the only exception,
Okay.
is I've went there and had 3 or 4 things happen on and if you want to call it an investigation, we're kind of just going there and hanging out and then, doing a little bit of, soft investigating, if you will. And then I've went other times and absolutely nothing happens out there. But Zach, I'm glad you mentioned Merker. I love that place. But talk to me about a few of the things you've had happen when you've been out there.
At Merker, oh god, several times where you just feel like you're being rushed up on, like out of nowhere. You feel like someone's coming up behind you and running up behind you. There was one time I was there with a group of just like 3 or 4 of us, and it was probably like 1 a.m, but if you just listened and when you were quiet, it sounded like a carriage or horse, stampeding, whatever, walking up and down the road. It sounded like horses with a wagon being pulled behind them on the road behind us, which is weird. And you got to think about, like, if you've been to that location, it's kind of a hike to get up there.
Yes, it is.
Back in the days, like, how did they get the bodies in the caskets? Like, they carried a full casket up that for, the funerals.
It is quite a steep hill. I agree. I'll share a story real quick because I had a friend of mine relay to me that I should go check that place out. And this was really early on when I was not working with a group and was able to talk my wife into going out there with me. And it was an early November night. And luckily it just wasn't that cold. Some November nights it's going to be freezing cold. And we were up there and nothing was happening. Nothing at all, and it was pitch dark. We were the only ones up there. Quite an eerie feeling to be up there, other than hearing coyotes howl and whatnot. And I had a mag flashlight sitting on that sign in the front of the cemetery, the Merker Cemetery sign, just as you get up the hill and you get into the cemetery there. And it'd been trying to get interaction. Well, I was asking it to turn it on and off, and it went on command, turned off. I know some people don't really find that a foolproof method to try and communicate with the dead or with spirits, but I seemed to get some interaction, and then we started hearing whistling, and it sounded like somebody casually whistling, and I don't mean like a bird. It sounded like somebody just casually whistling, like you'd hear somebody walking down the street or something. And my wife was pulling me down the hill. She couldn't get out of there fast enough.
I do know that I've been up there where investigators have been pulled away from the cemetery and just start wandering off for 15 or so minutes in one direction because they keep hearing stuff that they're chasing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I believe there's a totally different energy, a vibe to that place. I'm actually waiting for winter to kind of be over because I want to go back up.
Yeah,
it's a good location.
Absolutely, and I've had some great experiences there. I could spend
100%.
I could spend over an hour or so going on about some of the experiences I've had when I've been up there. But it is absolutely fascinating place. Any advice you guys have, because you guys have been doing this for a while? Any advice you guys have for anybody new to this field, thinking about trying to find a group? Get started, buying gear, going out investigating. Any advice? I'll start with Zach.
My advice would be, don't just try to jump onto a group right away. Find someone to mentor you. Once you get kind of to where you know a few people, or even know a group page like the one I run. You could ask someone that will kind of take you under their wing and show you the ropes. Just say, can I tag along? That is the best way, because often when you get into these groups, these teams, there's a lot of push and pull with teams as far as following the rules. Sometimes drama, and things like that. So it's kind of best to just learn from one person for a little while, and then you just start working with everybody. And when I started, I just wanted to work with everybody. I just like, okay, how does he do this? How does that? And I just soaked it all in. But often if you get into a team environment where you can't branch out and work with other people, you're kind of confined to how that team operates. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Zach, how about for you?
For me, I would say number one, don't let television be your teacher. Don't learn from television ghost hunting.
Right.
That's not what it's about. That's not the aim. And mostly, I want to say, yeah, do your research, learn about teams, find out what they're doing, where they investigate, what they do. But most of all, I think you are the best teacher that you can be to yourself. Do research, read books. If you want it bad enough, you're going to elevate yourself to the level that you feel like you need to be at. There's not a team that's going to do that for you. There's not, like I said, for me, it's a personal experience, but if you want to learn about it, the information's out there, and I say self-educate more than depend on others to tell you what it's about, because it's a weird subject, it's a weird topic. It's like religion, it's like politics. We all have our own beliefs, we all have our own desires. There's something that's pulling us one way or another, but it's going to be you that taps into what your reality and what your truth into the paranormal is.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about places you guys, bucket list places where you still want to investigate. Paul, I'll start with you.
Well, the Villisca Axe Murder House is one of them for sure. Waverly Hills. We could probably name places for days.
I want to go to Giza and go to the Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That would be ultimate destination bucket list investigation place.
Right. How about for U.S. locations for you, Zach? Places.
Okay.
We're going to be crossing one off here next couple of months. We're going to be Goldfield Hotel.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Salt Lake. We always investigate back west. I'd want to go east somewhere, maybe somewhere Gettysburg related, maybe Revolutionary War, New England-ish area, I want to say.
Okay. So you guys have mentioned two that are on my list, and Zach, you just mentioned one. That's Gettysburg. Been there long before I was doing paranormal investigating, and the place is amazing. It's got an energy to it, no doubt. I would love to go back and actually do some paranormal investigating. And then, Paul, I think you mentioned Waverly Hills. Those are two on my bucket list for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting places.
To Goldfield Hotel in April. Excited for that one.
Yeah, no, that is Goldfield is that's the one where Ghost Adventures has been a few times. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's the place, I think, isn't it? Like the brick got picked up and thrown, and like the 2x4 was floating in the air.
Yep.
Like,
That's a rare place.
So that's the documentary that started it for them. Is that's where they filmed? Is that right? Okay. All right.
Yep,
Interesting.
exactly.
And one more question I want to ask you guys. Do you think there is unity or disunity right now in the paranormal field and paranormal investigating?
A little bit of both. You have your teams that get along with each other. Like, I know so many people in the paranormal community that we all get along. We all do just fine. We work together. We help each other. If someone needs help on, like, a house, they can call another team in, and it's not a problem. We all go out to dinner together sometimes. So there is mostly a unity between a lot of teams out here that's been established for a long time. But then there's also the naysayers that are the ones causing the rift between us.
Yeah. I just got to the point where I was like, I'm an adult, and I don't give a shit what you think. So if you like what I'm doing, cool. Thank you for the support. We'll keep doing what we're doing. If you don't like it, cool. Thank you for not liking it. I wish you the best. Do your thing, but I'm at the point, opinions really don't matter to me. I really don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do and keep moving forward. And, yeah, there's always going to be someone that doesn't like what you're doing, no matter what you do. So
Right.
the important thing is how much energy and attention do you give to that. And I don't give energy and attention to that kind of stuff anymore.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good point, focus on the things you're doing and don't worry about
if you
the
don't
other
like
stuff.
it, turn the station.
Yeah.
Change the channel,
There you go.
Me and Zach are both independent. Like, we're not a team. We just, we do this together as collaboration, but we're both free agents. We do what we want.
Right. So I'm guessing you guys kind of work with different people along the way doing investigating.
I work with different teams all the time.
Yeah, that's great because you get a different perspective too, I would think, working with others instead of somebody that's locked in with one team. And so I think there could be some good.
It opens your toolbox to how much you can put in there, like how much you can learn, how much you can absorb, and how much, something maybe, hey, I didn't see it that way. You taught me something new.
Yep.
Instead of that, we have to stick with our team and don't work with other teams. This is our protocol. Stick to protocol. It's like, no, it's evolve beyond that. Learn as much as you can.
Right.
Learn until the day you die.
Right. Learn from others. Absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Guys, hopefully sometime I can go out and investigate with you down the road. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Vacation, we'll come film you guys.
I'm sorry, what was that, Paul?
I said find a location and we'll come film you guys.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday night. I appreciate your time. And so before we end here, just for the listeners, where do they go to find the film and other work that you guys have done?
Well, the film is on our YouTube channel. So if you just look at Paranormal Veracity Media, and you find our page on YouTube, our channel, otherwise, you'll find Eureka Unearthed documentary. You'll also find another documentary we did called Shadows of Silver City that we filmed up in Virginia City. But we have other videos where we went in with other teams and filmed them and all kinds of evidence videos. So that's where they can watch it.
Awesome. All right, Paul, Zach, thanks once again for joining me. Have a great rest of the night, and hopefully we can... I'll be watching any of the new stuff you guys put out down the road. Maybe we can have you on and talk again.
Oh, it's coming. Watch out for the new stuff. It's coming.
All right, guys.
Get off my lazy butt.
All right, man. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, thank you.
Happy hauntings.
Okay, so that's going to about do it for this episode. And a big thanks to Paul and Zach for joining me on the show. And it's great to hear about some of their very interesting experiences as paranormal investigators and some of the experiences they had while filming Eureka Unearthed, Echoes of the Past. Again, make sure you check that film out. You can go to YouTube and find it there. And make sure you join me next episode when Preston Dennett will be back on the show, and he's going to be talking about his new book, The Healing Power of UFOs. And Preston is a wealth of knowledge on the UFO topic. He's been investigating UFOs going all the way back to 1986, so he's got a lot of experience in the field, and it's great to have him coming back on the show. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and I'm really going to look forward to the next episode. Have a great night.